Alright, so we're back, of course, talking about some more FF7 Rebirth in this case. We're talking about everybody's favorite character, Genesis. Now, when it comes to Crisis Core, or I guess Crisis Core Union as well, if there's one constant complaint from the game, it's usually Genesis, right? That's everybody's least favorite character, probably almost in all of FF7. But if we can point to one specific moment that's maybe the worst Genesis thing, people often point out the fact that he's a part of the Nibelheim Incident. And when it comes to Final Fantasy VII, you can point to a plethora of moments throughout the story that are iconic. You can point to a lot of moments that are debatably the most important. But when it comes to the Nibelheim Incident, this is really the most defining moment in FF7. This is the catalyst for really everything, right? It kicks off the events that lead to, of course, Zack's death, Sephiroth's downfall, Cloud becoming the protagonist, the hero, all those things, right? And the biggest issue, as we alluded to earlier in the video, with the Nibelheim Incident in Crisis Core, is that they give Genesis a part in it, when of course the character did not exist with OG FF7. But not only that, they make him a contributing factor to Sephiroth, killing everybody in Nibelheim, or maybe even the biggest factor in some ways, right? Because Sephiroth's kind of piecing it together in Crisis Core, similar to what he did in OG FF7, questioning who Jenova is he human, all those things. But then you have Genesis float down from the sky to, as I've said in a previous video at some point, vomit exposition, right? Just tell Sephiroth everything. So you could argue that he may be the reason that Sephiroth does what he does, which is why I think to a certain degree people just fucking hate the character. And I'm honestly confused why they would do that, right? I don't know why you'd want to alter what is maybe the most important scene, most important moment in all of Final Fantasy VII and shoehorn in this character. I know that there's they wanted to push him because gacked or whatever back in the day. I kind of understand why they did it. But to alter this scene to me, it's just crazy. And that's coming from somebody that's not even a Genesis hater. I've said it before in videos, right? I don't love Genesis. He's kind of like a Vaughn from Final Fantasy XII for me. Everybody hates these characters, and me personally, I'm just whatever. I wasn't bothered by them. I wasn't playing Crisis Core back in 07, 08, whatever, and rolling my eyes every time Genesis came on screen, but I also don't love the character either. But obviously, in the modern era, the last several years, really immersing myself into the FF7 community and going through and seeing all this stuff again with hindsight, I can understand the problem, right? I obviously didn't understand the issue back then. And of course, these days, I'm very much bothered by Genesis being a part of it, because it feels beyond forced, because he just comes there, he says some shit to Sephiroth and disappears, and is not even a part of the Nibelheim Incident in any capacity anymore. Now, that's a long intro, so to speak. What we're here to talk about, of course, is FF7 Rebirth. Specifically, at least for the majority of the video, we're talking about the Kalm flashback, which is where, of course, Cloud tells the party about the Nibelheim Incident. Of course, faulty memories and things aren't entirely accurate. And based off of the ending of the episode mission, where our party is just outside the town of Kalm, but also the Rebirth little teaser trailer that we got, where we see Cloud and Sephiroth walking together, which would also be him recalling the Nibelheim Incident incorrectly, because, of course, it was not actually Cloud. The Kalm flashback should be the first thing that we do when it comes to FF7 Rebirth. And the question we got to ask is, will Genesis be a part of that? And really the only reason we got to ask the question of whether or not Genesis is going to be a part of the Nibelheim Incident in any capacity, whether that's Kalm flashback or just the actual Nibelheim Incident, is because of the re-release of Crisis Core, right? Crisis Core Reunion being canon to Remake means that Genesis being a part of the Nibelheim Incident is canon, unfortunately. Because it's actually kind of bittersweet that we got Crisis Core Reunion, because if they never re-released the game, you could maybe make the argument, hey, maybe they would retcon it. Maybe Genesis was never part of the Nibelheim Incident, and that's just a mistake they did 15 years ago. But the fact that we have Reunion, it's that's unfortunately canon. Now, this is actually a question I asked on Twitter not too long ago, which I often do with a lot of my videos, just kind of get a general consensus of what people are thinking on topics before I discuss them. And it seems like the majority of people are in agreement that Genesis would not be a part of the Kalm flashback, which is Cloud retelling the story, of course. This actually makes a lot of sense anyways, right? Because Cloud is misremembering the events of the Nibelheim Incident, right? He doesn't recall everything accurately. He even says at one point that he doesn't remember what happens right before he attacks Sephiroth, right? So it's easy to explain away, even though Genesis is supposed to be there, Cloud would forget him, similar to how he forgets Zack. And I think that makes the most sense, right? Because even if Genesis is going to be a big player when it comes to the remake story, I don't think you want to come out the gate with him, right? Even for people that have played Crisis Core, they know who the character is. I don't think you want to start Rebirth by showing us goddamn Genesis. And I know some people don't like the idea of Genesis being a part of the remake story, but it's more or less a certainty with some of the teases and stuff they were doing with, just remake-based game with, teasing Crisis Core stuff and Project G and things like that. But also, with Remake being a part of the compilation itself, we know, of course, that Genesis is alive in the compilation. He survives Crisis Core. We see him at the end of Dirge of Cerberus, and in fact, prior to Remake releasing, Genesis at the end of Dirge of Cerberus, picking up Vice's body and flying off into the sky, is the last thing that's ever happened in the entire FF7 timeline not including jumping forward 500 years. Now, how much he's a part of the remake story just kind of depends on how much they're still wanting to bank on the character of Genesis, right? Because they're setting him up to be something major with that, secret ending to Dirge Cerberus. It kind of depends on if they're still wanting to do that. He might not be like a major player. We could be entirely wrong on this, right? He might be relegated to some cutscenes and maybe a fucking virtual reality fight like Vice or something, right? Maybe Vice is going to be a big part of the story going forward too. That's, of course, a possibility. But as of right now, right, Vice is just a VR thing. I suppose another question that we could ask is whether or not Genesis is going to be a part of the actual Nibelheim Incident when it comes to the remake trilogy, right? So this would either be late into Rebirth or possibly the third game. And for basing off OG FF7, we learned about what really happened in Nibelheim whenever Tifa is helping Cloud piece his mind back together within the live stream, right? Which takes place in Midil in OG FF7. But let's say we get to that moment where they're piecing Cloud's mind back together and they're learning what really happened in Nibelheim. Would they have Genesis be a part of that? That's one I'm not entirely sure. Let's set aside the Nibelheim Incident for a second. When it comes to the live stream scene, this is a lot of people's favorite scene. Even the devs have said that this is the most important scene when it comes to Final Fantasy VII. So would you tarnish this scene by showing goddamn Genesis? And I'm not sure what they're going to do. Because of the re-release of Crisis Core and it being attached to Remake, it makes him being a part of this canon. So whenever they're realizing and piecing the memories back together, and they're remembering what exactly happened within the reactor and all that other shit, it's he kind of has to be there. And that fucking sucks. And I'm sure people would be perfectly fine with him just completely ignoring Genesis when it comes to Nibelheim Incident. But I also like a bit of consistency, right? Even if I don't want Genesis to be a part of it, he kind of is. He unfortunately is a part of it. And if we were to get either the Kalm flashback or Cloud remembering the Nibelheim Incident and we don't see Genesis at all, it'd be very, very weird if you played Crisis Core Reunion, right? Because if he's not, then the whole FF7 universe is just kind of fucked, right? You play OG FF7, oh my god, there's no Genesis, right? Then you play Crisis Core and or Crisis Core Reunion, oh, Genesis is a part of it. And then you play a remake and then he's not a part of it. It's what's going on? What's happening? So there's no correct answer here. I say that, but most people's answer would be ignore Genesis. But again, consistency. So of course that's where we're going to pass off to you guys. So no matter how much you hate Genesis, take your bias, set it aside. We're just talking about the Kalm flashback when it comes to Rebirth and the actual Nibelheim Incident when it comes to the remake trilogy, whether we see that in Rebirth or the third game. What are your thoughts, and I guess the live stream too, what are your thoughts on Genesis? Is he going to be a part of any of that? Because he kind of has to be, which, again, is frustrating, but he has to be. Otherwise, fucking Reunion looks stupid. Look, they could certainly ignore it, they could sweep it under the rug, but let's look at it from a different perspective. Say you're a brand new player to FF7. You started with Remake, you played Episode Intermission, you played Crisis Core Reunion, and the point of Crisis Core Reunion, regardless of what they'll say, is more than likely to introduce that game, that story, and those characters to brand new players, right? Because the majority of us already know it. So if you're going to show people that Genesis was a part of the Nibelheim Incident and then not continue to show that going forward with Rebirth or the third game, it wouldn't make a lot of goddamn sense. Anyways, I've talked enough. That's the video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @DaveYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain or leave it like Cobain.